last time on Island ADV.
So folks, the plan for today is pretty straightforward. Get to Amqui, get to Campbellton, and then get into Carleton Mountain Provincial Park. Oh, look at the train. And with that, we bid farewell to Quebec. Well folks, after riding for pretty much all afternoon and factoring in the time change, we are about 10 mics out from camp at this point at Mount Carleton Provincial Park in New Brunswick here. It was a real good ride back from Quebec and down into New Brunswick. Man, just those awesome mountains, those twisties, those rivers, beautiful. And we got a really, really good bite to eat just outside Campbellton too. At Country Kitchen, we had the most intense hot hamburger poutine. You know, it's like I told Brandon, like, hang on, because this is like your caloric requirement for like the next 3 days here. But regardless of that, we did get some supplies in town in San Quentin, just outside of where we are now. So I think we got a fairly decent campsite set up. This campground's got a lot of steep competition after what we've gone through in Quebec. So, you know, my expectations are managed at this point. All right, so we have things kind of figured out. The forest fire index is in red, so there's no fire tonight. So the sausages we brought will be for the raccoons. I'm sure they're pretty excited about it. It's definitely different from Quebec, that's for sure. I've actually never stayed at the campground in New Brunswick.
You said we needed to close it?
Please don't fall on me, please don't fall on me.
You got that key? Nope, there it goes.
Oh really? Okay, cool,
Yep.
cool. So we'll head straight first off and we'll just check out that lodge. Lodge Cafe. That could be cool if it's got like cafe aspect to it. Yeah. It's pretty standard for all parks, I think. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I guess they put a lot of money into this place in the last little while. You can see that some things are still being built up. I guess New Brunswick's got deep pockets for its campgrounds and its parks, so that's pretty sweet to see. Always love seeing nature being invested into. Beep. Kilometer 30. Whoa.
I'm by no means a campground aficionado, and in most cases I usually avoid campgrounds, and I like to sleep out into the wild. Mount Carleton Provincial Park has a lot of campground areas, and the logistics of checking in and getting access to it and finding your site were a lot, and it made me really love and appreciate the approach the CPEC Quebec campgrounds had with respect to just being able to reserve online and then just drive right to your campsite and set up and know that you've got everything under control. But again, as I said before, this campground had some steep competition.
Ooh, pretty tucked in. Oh, it's a good little fire pit too, what a shame. gully here or whatever at the end. A nice little table to prepare your snacks and read your comic books. I don't know. Yes, it's not bad. There's no picturesque lake, no babbling brook, no rushing waterfall with beautiful salmon river, no raging beach with wonderful, light show and crashing waves. But yeah, I guess it'll do. Anyway, we're gonna get unpacked. We're gonna go into routine and set up, and I'll bring you along for the cool stuff. All right, I don't have too much battery power left for the GoPros, so I figured we'd probably, instead of waiting for like the bridge or like the last little ride home, we'd look over our like after action report, the AAR, if you will, the cringy part of this series. I don't know, it makes sense. We usually incorporate some of the stuff every year. I think this year we definitely, like you just said, like we were just like thinking about them, and you said the point to sustain is like the campgrounds for sure, right? Like,
That's right.
Yeah.
Campground, wild camp. This is the third campground in a row.
Yeah. And then we were talking about like, maybe doing even a hotel if we were doing something super, super long. So like, say, imagine we're doing like 10 days, like maybe day 5 is like a hotel, because I think we'd need that complete refresh. What else for sustain, do you think?
Probably the pace.
Yeah.
Yeah, pace was pretty good.
I would say too. Yeah. Like before last year, we've always had it and be like, okay, it's going to be an 8-hour ride day is what we'd say. And that was me playing it 8 hours off Google Maps without any kind of like off-road factor. And this time around, it was like, it's a 5-hour ride day. And what did it end up being? Like 7?
6 or 7.
6 or 7. Yeah. So I think that was really good too.
Point to improve. Probably, again, on the campgrounds, varied terrain on the campgrounds. We were kind of limited this time around to mostly tents.
Yeah.
There were a few where we could have done something different, but each campground we went to, it seemed the obvious choice.
Absolutely.
Each time was a tent.
The hammock stayed in the luggage the whole trip. I didn't take my hammock out once because it just wasn't a really, really good spot to do it. Plus the threat of rain the whole time, right?
Yeah.
I would say. I was going to try to think of like something to improve as far as rain's concerned, but I just don't think there's anything you can do. You just got to bear it, right?
Yeah, you just gotta suck it up and go through it.
Yeah, that's true. What was your top 3 moments of the trip?
Top 3 moments. First one was probably going through the mountains.
Yeah. What section do you think?
Honestly, I think the weird section was when we were at sea level. We had the ocean on one side and the mountains on the left.
Just outside of Saint Anne de Mall.
That's right.
Yeah.
Next was the campgrounds where we were right on the water.
Yeah.
Those were awesome.
I'd agree. Like I think for my latest in the last 2 years of doing this, and every time I'm looking for a wild camp, I'm looking for a body of water to be around, because I think no matter what, it's a body of water. We can have a fire safely. And like, just, it's always looking really good. What else? Any others?
Last one would probably be the amount of dirt riding on the TQT.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd agree. The dirt rides were just the longest I've ever done in my life. For sure. I'd say I'm pretty much right there with you, not to cop out on the 3 favorite things, but I would say my favorite thing probably was the lake this morning. I think that was probably the most beautiful lake I've seen and stayed at overall. Just the glass on it and watching the kingfishers like go through and just the birds flying around and just so peaceful. It was such an amazing find. So that's like the first of my 3. I think second is like the TQT app, which is a weird thing to bring up. And it's kind of odd because like, I think I'm going to dedicate a whole episode just to that app, how to use it, why it's important. Because I think when people get that app and they look at it, they're like, oh, this is just a GPX map. It's not really going to do any GPS things. But once you lock onto the route, it almost takes over, takes control. Like it gives you progress bars. I'm not trying to like push the app or anything because it's very like niche, right? You're only using it in Quebec for Quebec, Trans-Québec Trail, but like it just took a lot of the stress off this trip for me, which is really, really huge. I have 2 others. The fires every single night were wicked. I'll get to that again in a second, but before I do, the disconnection I think was awesome. Like that's a low-key thing. Like every time in Quebec on the Trans-Québec Trail, we had, I would say a good 60% of the trip was like no cell service whatsoever. There's no cell service now. And like, I completely disconnected from social media. There was like times when we got back into civilization and I would text Mrs. Dowski and like let her know that everything was good. And then I had the inkling to like, well, maybe I'll, you know, look and make an Instagram post or make a Facebook post. And I just didn't do any of that stuff. And it felt good. I know I'm supposed to be like the social media guy with like the YouTube channel or whatever, but I mean, you can only do so much of that before it just gets weird. Sometimes, right? Like you end up doing it all the time. So like, it was really nice. I think it was the first time I've actually completely disconnected and enjoyed myself. And like I mentioned, the fires every night were really cool. Just chilling out, chatting, smoking, drinking, listening to music and enjoying the fires. And unfortunately we can't have a fire tonight because the forest fire index here around New Brunswick is super high, I guess. I'm not a wildlife management forestry person, so it's not my call to make, so we're not going to have a fire. But we did have fires every single night, so now is a great time to throw to a montage of the best fires of the trip. Alright man, let's head to the gate, give them back their fancy card. Let's go home. Little Tobique, it's cool. See it. Well, there we are. Back home on my little red island. Oh my goodness, what an amazing 7 days and 6 nights in the Gaspé Peninsula. Holy smokes. I
had my doubts that we were going to be able to pull it off. But it was such a great time. And you know what? I was talking to Brandon before we parted ways in town because it's just easier for him to get home in town. I usually like taking the back roads back to the home base back here. But we agreed on one thing before we parted ways, that it felt like we just left yesterday. I don't know if that's something, because we've been making these trips a little bit longer every single time. Every time we do them, we stack a few more days on it, and this is by far the longest. I think we clocked in at something like 25, it's close to 2,500 kilometers, which is a crazy amount for me alone. I know many people have done it more, but to those of you that might be watching this who have done very, very long journeys like this, does it feel the same way? Does it feel like when you get home, it feels like you left yesterday? And I don't know, it felt like we could keep going. But I'll say this, I do love my red dirt roads. I love Prince Edward Island. I love being able to see Mrs. Debsby again. That felt so good. That felt so good to see her again. I hope that this series has come out well. I did the best that I could to try to capture as much of this ride and as much of this adventure as I could, and tried to keep it to, at least bring back something so that I could share with you. Beyond all the equipment failures that we have, I hope that I've been able to create something that I can share with you to help inspire you to maybe go on an adventure that's something similar, maybe up to the Gaspé and up to the Gaspé Peninsula. And I hope that you do find something like that, a nice longer adventure that you can stick a narrative onto and create something that is your own, And I hope this inspires you to do that. But I'd like to thank you all for coming along on this adventure this year. This is a really, really fun time, following the song of the Siren together. It's been great. But I think for now, I'm gonna get a bite to eat. And actually, do one of these right here. How's that? For a great wife there. She restocked the fridge before we even got back. And boy, that's some cold. I love it. So, until the next time we ride together, be it out there on the red dirt roads, be it up in the mountains of the Gaspé Peninsula, be it along the edges of cliffs to our left and crashing waves to our right, take care, ride safe. Oh, Foxy, you're sounding dirty. Look at you, left. Jeez, you sound different than the first time you left.